an aircraft carrier, tens of billions of dollars, a crew of 5,000, and the status of an unsinkable fortress. For decades, these steel giants stood as symbols of absolute power at sea. But in the 21st century, the rules of the game have changed. Today, they're being challenged by hypersonic missiles, drone swarms, and satellite reconnaissance capable of guiding a strike from space. The world is asking a serious question. Have these naval titans become the most expensive targets in human history? Where conventional guns and countermeasures fall short, technologies bordering on science fiction begin to enter the picture. Forget Hollywood-style force fields, the reality is far more interesting. The Plasma Acoustic Shield System, a plasma zone capable of disrupting an attack fractions of a second before a fatal hit. Could the newest aircraft carrier, the USS Gerald R. Ford, really become the first ship in history to carry energy armor? And what exactly is this, a genuine technological breakthrough, or a last attempt to save a fading era of giant warships? Let's find out just how realistic it is to surround a massive warship with a plasma shield. Will this system become a trailblazer among futuristic weapons, or is it simply a striking concept somewhere between real science and military science fiction? If we strip away the futuristic layer right from the start, the idea of using plasma in military technology appeared long before anyone had ever heard the name Plasma Acoustic Shield System. The first serious research in this area began during the rapid development of high-energy physics in the second half of the 20th century, when it became clear that ionized gas could significantly alter the properties of the environment around an object. Scientists were primarily interested in how plasma affected the propagation of radio waves, thermal radiation, and aerodynamics. And the first practical observations didn't come from shipbuilding at all, but from the space industry. As spacecraft re-entered the dense layers of the atmosphere, a plasma sheath formed around the vehicle, a superheated ionized layer that temporarily blocked radio communication. It was precisely this effect that later pushed engineers to ask the question, if plasma can influence the propagation of electromagnetic signals this strongly, could it be used deliberately as a controllable protective medium? By the 1970s, similar ideas were already being discussed in defense circles. At that time, however, the main interest was not so much in protecting ships as in the potential ability to reduce the radar signature of aircraft. In theory, a plasma cloud around an airframe could alter the reflection of radio waves, reducing the effectiveness of enemy radar detection. But the technology of that era was nowhere near mature enough to make such a system stable and controllable. Plasma generation required enormous amounts of energy, while containing and managing it remained a highly complex problem. The topic got a fresh boost in the 2000s when the American defense company Stellar Photonics began work on the Plasma Acoustic Shield System, or PAS, backed by a $2.7 million government contract. The project was overseen by the United States Army Armament Research, Development, and Engineering Center at Picatinny Arsenal, New Jersey, and the original goal was to create a non-lethal standoff crowd control system capable of producing acoustic shock and disorienting people. PAS was built around Stellar Photonics' proprietary synchronized photo pulse detonation, or SPD. The first ultra-short laser pulse creates an ionized bubble in the air, and the second, arriving millionths of a second later, rapidly expands that bubble, generating a blinding flash and a loud crack. That combination of light and sound became the system's main practical effect, but the concept quickly moved beyond the realm of indirect fire and into air defense. Because if a plasma cloud can be placed at a calculated point along a trajectory, then the same processes may be able to disrupt the aerodynamics of a flying target, whether that target's a missile or an enemy aircraft. Put simply, imagine a defensive layer around your military hardware made up of hundreds or even thousands of plasma blasts in the air ahead of an incoming object, such as an RPG round, a bullet, or another munition. The point's not necessarily to destroy the threat itself, but to disrupt its flight stability, forcing the munition to change the orientation of its warhead or simply causing it to malfunction at the critical moment. In publications from that period, PAS was presented as a breakthrough project capable of creating a kind of curtain of mini-flashes at a distance of up to 328 feet. But it's important to understand that even in the most optimistic presentations, PASS did not look like a ready-made multi-layered defensive system for ships, much less for aircraft carriers. It was more of an early demonstration that plasma could be used not just as a side effect of a laser strike, but as a separate tool of influence, optical, acoustic, shock-based, and potentially aerodynamic as well. The shield concept was not born out of an established naval doctrine, but out of a laboratory question: could the air in front of a target itself be controlled in such a way that it becomes part of the defense? And over time, that line of thinking didn't disappear. In 2018, the Joint Non-Lethal Weapons Directorate was already publicly presenting its laser-induced plasma effect program as part of its directed energy non-lethal weapons portfolio. In more recent patent documentation, you can also find even more practical concepts, such as laser-induced plasma used as an ultra-fast decoy target for an infrared-guided missile. Of course, a patent doesn't mean a system's been adopted into service, but it absolutely does prove that military engineers continue to view plasma in the air not as a flashy gimmick, but as a potential component of missile defense and countermeasure systems. The reason is obvious. Modern naval warfare is evolving in a way that makes missiles faster, cheaper, and more numerous, while ships are becoming more expensive and more complex. The threat facing the U.S. Navy now does not come from one or two enemy aircraft, but from entire complexes of reconnaissance assets, drones, and cruise and anti-ship missiles that can attack simultaneously from multiple directions. You barely come up with a counter to the enemy's hypersonic missiles, and suddenly you're dealing with the problem of potential multi-axis drone attacks. Solve that, now it's time for combined strikes from different altitudes backed by saturation with cheap decoys. For an aircraft carrier, and especially a supercarrier of the Gerald R. Ford class, that's particularly dangerous. Because today, this is not just a ship, it's a strategic asset with a price tag exceeding $13 billion before the air wing is even included. On top of that, it's far too politically significant to lose without catastrophic consequences for national prestige. That's exactly why the U.S. Navy is showing increasing interest in energy-based systems that depend not on the number of interceptor missiles stored below deck, but on electrical generation capacity. If a ship's power supply can create a protective effect, then each such pulse could be incomparably cheaper than any interceptor missile. That's where PASS finds perfect synergy with Ford-class supercarriers, because they were originally designed by American engineers with enormous power reserves for future technologies. That made a vessel equipped with two Bechtel A1B nuclear reactors, together producing around 300 megawatts of electrical power, the leading candidate for any discussion involving lasers, high-power microwave systems, and plasma-based defensive technologies. But can PASS actually stop a missile today? This is where the most important dividing line between engineering and a good idea begins. In its current form, PASS is not physically capable of destroying an incoming missile. What it can provide instead is a localized flash, a brief plasma impulse, a low-volume shockwave, and a change in the properties of the air in a very limited area, and for full-scale shipboard defense, that's still not enough. At the same time, recognizing that limitation gave rise to a much broader idea among researchers: use not PASS itself as the weapon, but its physical principle as part of future systems. If the plasma region can be scaled up, the fleet could achieve not only temporary distortion of the carrier's infrared signature, but also interference with the thermal sensors of enemy missiles, modification of the local electromagnetic environment, and partial disruption of certain types of guidance systems. In other words, the idea is no longer an energy shield in the cinematic sense, but the creation of a much broader active energy interference environment in front of the target. Online, there have already been repeated attempts to imagine what a boxed module version of PASS might look like. Picture something like a naval refrigerator, except instead of a door, it has an armored hood covered in heat-reflective ceramic. At its core is a fiber laser cascade. It focuses slightly off the side of the ship, where within 0.5 microseconds, a plasma sphere roughly 39.4 inches, about 1 meter in diameter, flashes into existence, and 8 to 10 megawatts of power are enough to ionize the air almost instantly, shaping the future energy barrier. Then a ring-shaped array of infrared emitters kicks in. Fractions of a millisecond later, they hit the center of the plasmoid with a low-frequency wave, forcing the superheated gas to expand violently. The result is a directed clap that disrupts airflow and destabilizes an incoming enemy missile. The module draws power from a bank of supercapacitors that charges from the ship's electrical system in a matter of seconds and then dumps the entire packet in one short, powerful impulse, like a camera flash, only tens of thousands of times more powerful. Cooling is handled by seawater overboard. The loop pulls heat away from the optics, runs it through a compact heat exchanger, and dumps it right back into the sea. No bulky radiators and no sacrifice of precious internal carrier volume. Pass blocks could be neatly installed into unused recesses beneath the slope of the Ford's flight deck close to the EMAL's catapults, because the catapult power buses are already designed for pulses in the hundreds of megawatts and effectively become a natural outlet for pass without the need to lay new cable runs or modernize the carrier's electrical distribution network. 4 such units could be placed around the corners of the hangar, and like giant spotlights, they would form an almost continuous air fence along the launch line. On Navy technical diagrams, they're drawn as thin arcs visually resembling the circular sweep of a radar, but here those arcs exist not on a screen but in the real air, where plasma flashes and cracks into existence, stripping an enemy missile of control just feet from the deck. As for cost, when we're talking about energy armor and impulses lasting only millionths of a second, the figures are in the range of 0.2 to 0.03 kilowatt hours. At typical shipboard electricity cost of 20 cents to 30 cents per kilowatt hour, that comes out to only tens of dollars. Once optical wear and emitter degradation are factored in, experts estimate around $200 to $400 per clap. By comparison, the high-energy laser with integrated optical dazzler and surveillance, or Helios, is estimated by analysts to spend as little as $10 per shot. Its power comes from a 60 to 100 kilowatt generator, mirror wear is minimal, and there's no ammunition involved at all. The railgun, by contrast, still looks like the hungriest of the futuristic weapons. While the electricity itself costs very little, each hypervelocity projectile runs around $22,000 to $35,000. And once rail wear is factored in, the true cost could easily rise to $40,000 or more per shot. So among its innovative peers, PASS appears to occupy a kind of golden middle ground, more expensive than a laser, but an order of magnitude cheaper than a railgun, making it economically attractive as a close-in layer of defense. Like any technology, the PASS energy shield concept has its own weaknesses. Atmospheric factors. The maritime environment degrades laser propagation. Humidity, salt aerosol, dust, and turbulence cause scattering, absorption, spot jitter, and wavefront distortion. Even though some of this can be compensated for with adaptive optics, tip-tilt correction, and carefully selected emission modes, the U.S. Navy can't fully control atmospheric effects. Optics protection. Salt aerosol, grime, and deposits reduce the transparency of the protective window and degrade beam quality, so the system would require a protective shutter, durable coatings, and built-in optical path cleaning systems. Vibration and stabilization. Pitching, hull vibration, and the operation of shipboard machinery make it difficult to keep the beam precisely on target. That means the system would require stabilized beam steering, line of sight correction, and vibration isolation measures for optical components. Electromagnetic compatibility. Any high-power directed energy system must be carefully integrated into a ship's electrical and electronic architecture, which in turn requires filtering, shielding, power stabilization, and compatibility verification with the carrier's radars, communication systems, and electronic warfare suite. PASS is probably the perfect example of how science, engineering, and myth become intertwined in modern military technology. On the one hand, a plasma shield sounds like pure science fiction. On the other, behind the term are very real physical processes, years of experiments with laser-induced plasma, and a very clear strategic need for the fleet to protect especially valuable ships from threats that are becoming faster, cheaper, and more numerous. So the PASS concept shouldn't be dismissed as crazy, even if for now it remains more of a vivid concept and part of a broader story about the relationship between the U.S. Navy and directed energy weapons. The real momentum today is still centered on the Navy's actual laser programs, from Laser Weapon System, or LAWS, to Optical Dazzling Interdictor Navy, or ODIN, Helios, Layered Laser Defense, and other systems that are step-by-step moving naval air defense toward the status of a true speed-of-light weapon. But sooner or later, we're almost certain to see some form of energy barrier installed on Ford-class supercarriers. And now you know where its roots came from. And what do you think? When will the era of those combat lasers and plasma shields, seemingly lifted straight from the pages of science fiction novels, finally arrive? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you always stay connected. See you soon.